Welcome to Dead and Roasted. What can I get you?
I don't care if you've got no fare, no ticket, no money whatsoever. Hop in, we're going for a ride through the darkest road I can find. We're gonna go see what we can see, or what can see us. Today's episode features scary night drive stories that will make you turn in your driver's license and sell your car. Enjoy. These are tales from the break room. Warning. The following story contains depictions of violence against animals. Flat Tires and the Psycho. From Customs 1989. This was August 2018, and I still think about it at least once a week. Sometimes when I'm driving at night, especially on those empty stretches of highway through the hills, I'll catch myself checking the rearview mirror more than I should. My cousin Atkin and I worked for an unnamed moving company. The owner, Darnell, ran it out of a warehouse on the south side of town. We would load people's stuff up, drive it to their new place, and unload. And having to work with Atkin, who I had basically grown up with, made the days go by faster. That particular day, we'd had a late job. Some lawyer moving from his downtown condo to a house in the suburbs. The guy had way more stuff than he'd told Darnell about, which is typical. So what should have been a 4-hour job turned into 7. By the time we got everything unloaded and drove the truck back to the warehouse, it was pushing 9:30 p.m. Now, I'd been looking at this Toyota Tacoma on Craigslist for about a week. It was a 2012, decent mileage. Guy was asking for $8,500, which seemed fair to me. Problem was, he lived out of the way, about 90 minutes through the hills on the highway. He had messaged me that morning, saying he was heading out of town for work the next day, so he wouldn't be back for a week, and if I wanted to see the truck and make an offer, tonight was my only shot. Atkin was game to ride along. His girlfriend was working a night shift at the hospital anyway, and he knew trucks better than I did. We grabbed some gas station coffee and hit the road in my Corolla around 9:45. The drive out is mostly 2-lane highway winding through hills and farmland. Not much to see at night except the occasional porch light from houses set way back from the road. Atkin lasted about 40 minutes before he dozed off, but that was fine by me. I had a podcast playing, ironically enough, a podcast about unsolved disappearances. I recall checking my phone at a red light in some tiny town. 10:52 p.m. GPS said another 20 minutes to the guy's place. I was already doing the math on whether this was worth it, driving almost 2 hours either way to maybe buy a truck. But I had been looking for months, and this was the best deal I'd found so far. The tire blowout happened so fast, I barely had time to process it. 1 second I was cruising along at 55 miles per hour. The next, there's this explosive sound and the car lurches hard to the right. I fought with the steering wheel trying to keep us on the road, and we skidded to a stop on the shoulder. Atkin was jerked awake, cursing up a storm and grabbing the door handle. "What happened?" "A tire blew, I think." My hands were shaking. We nearly went into the ditch. I turned on the hazards and got out to look. Both front tires were completely shredded. Not just flat, they had been destroyed. I had no idea what I hit to cause that to happen. I don't think I saw anything on the road. "You kidding me?" I said. I had never seen tires this mutilated before. "Both of them?" Atkin came around to look. His phone flashlight was on. "Holy crap, man! What did you hit?" "Nothing, I don't know, there was nothing there." I was teed off. 2 basically new tires. This would cost at least $300 to replace, and we were gonna have to be towed from the middle of nowhere. So much for buying a truck. "Yo, I can call Mindy," Atkin said. His buddy Mendez from high school ran a towing service. "He owes me some dosh. Maybe this will make us even." I thanked Atkin for doing me a favor, and while he made the call, I looked up and down the empty highway. We really were properly in the middle of nowhere. No houses nor house lights visible, no streetlights either. All I could see were hills and trees on both sides. Last piece of civilization I passed was a sign, maybe 50 yards back, that said the town we were headed to was only 15 miles. Well, when you're on foot, it's not only 15 miles. "Sweet, he can come get us," Atkin said, pocketing his phone. "But it's gonna be about an hour. He's on another call right now. Then we'll need to wait for him to drive up here." Great. Better than nothing. We got back in the car to wait. Atkin turned on the radio, flipping through channels until he found some classic rock. We sat there maybe 20 minutes, talking crap about work. Atkin was telling me about this job from the week before. Said some lady had packed her dishes in garbage bags and got mad when stuff broke. I was only half listening, mostly just stressing about having to buy new tires, when I glanced in the rearview mirror. There was a face pressed against the back windshield. I jerked so hard I hit my knee in the steering column. I cursed. "What's up?" Atkin looked at me like I'd lost it. "There's someone." I twisted around to look, but the angle was wrong. There was someone behind the car. "What do you mean, someone?" I explained how I saw a face in the back window. Some guy. Atkin craned his neck to look back, saying that he didn't see a thing. "He was right there, I'm not joking." "So, go check it out." "You go check it out," I told him. "Man, it's your car, your trip too." I sat there for a second, trying to get my nerves under control. He was right though. The rational part of my brain said it was probably just someone who'd stopped to help. But something about that face, the way it had been pressed right up against the glass. I turned on the brights, then I opened up the door, staying close to the car as I stepped out. The headlights lit up the road ahead, but did practically nothing for the darkness behind us. "Hello?" I called out. I was backing away from the rear instead of approaching it. "I saw you. We need some help, if you can offer any." I kept backing up. Eventually, I called out again. "We're fine, we just need a tow." That's when he came around the back of the car. What I first noticed was how tall he was, about 6'4", and how skinny he was in an unhealthy way, like he'd been sick. His hair was black and stringy, hanging past his shoulders, and his clothes looked like he'd been wearing them for weeks. And yet, despite his appearance, he was smiling. It didn't really match the situation. Not to me. "Stay back," I said automatically, even though he hadn't really moved toward me yet. I looked around for something to defend myself with. A rock or a big stick or anything, but the shoulder of the road was just patchy grass and loose gravel. The man tilted his head, still smiling, and began to walk toward the driver's side window. He wasn't rushing, just walking slowly, like he had every right to be there. I then looked at Atkin inside the car, mouthing, "Who is that?" with his eyes wide. The man stopped at the driver's door, turned that smile on me for a long moment, then quickly yanked the door open and slid behind the wheel. What in the world did he think he was doing? Atkin scrambled out the passenger seat, repeatedly saying, "What the heck, what the heck?" I rushed to the open driver's door. The man was just sitting there, hands on the steering wheel, staring straight ahead. Up close, I could smell him. Cigarettes and something else, something that smelled rotten. "Get out," I said. "That's my car. Get out." He turned to look at me and the smile faded. His face twisted into something angry and ugly. "Screw you," he said in a voice rough from years of smoking. "Not everyone can afford a car." "What?" "Get out!" I grabbed his shoulder then. He stood up so fast I had to step back. He was even taller than I thought, looming over me in the darkness. For a second, I thought he was going to hit me, but he just shoved past, his shoulder catching me hard enough to knock me back a step. I stood there, completely lost for what to do. Do you call the cops in this kind of situation? A weird guy appeared in the middle of the night and sat in my car for 10 seconds? Atkin came around the front of the car, keeping his distance from the man who was now walking across the highway. When he made it to the far shoulder, the man turned back. The smile was there again. "Sorry for the trouble," he called out, almost sing-song. Then he pulled something from his jacket and threw it over at me. As a reflex, I jerked sideways, avoiding whatever it was, leaving Atkin there to catch it. I heard him make a sound. Not quite a yell, more like a choked gasp. He had whatever it was in his hands, and I saw him look down at it, and he basically screamed and dropped it. He started to yell, "What the F is that?" The man had already disappeared into the dark on the other side of the road. I then looked down at what Atkin had dropped. It was the head of a cat. Just the head, severed rough at the neck. An orange tabby with eyes clouded over, fresh enough that there was blood on Atkin's hands. We both scrambled back into the car. Atkin frantically wiped his hands on his jeans, and I locked the doors, turning off the headlights, and we sat there in the dark, trying to catch our breaths. "What kind of person does that? What the heck, man?" Atkin said. I didn't have an answer. We sat there until we saw Mendez's tow truck lights coming up the highway. Neither of us talked about getting out to flag him down. We just waited until he pulled up right beside us. I told Mendez we hit something on the road, that my tires blew, told him about the freak we saw on the road and what he threw at Atkin, which was still lying on the shoulder where Atkin had dropped it. I don't know who that man was, why he approached us at all, what his problem was, and I never did get to see that truck. Dark figure creature on the UPS route. From DeliveryBoy. I started to deliver for UPS when I was 26, right after my wife Denise and I got married. The hours are often brutal, especially during peak season. I'm rarely home before 9 p.m. Denise used to complain about it constantly, especially after our daughter was born. These days she's made her peace with it, mostly because my overtime pay got her a new SUV and our above-ground pool. The job isn't too bad. You're on your own most of the day, listening to whatever you want, getting paid to basically work out. Sure, there is the occasional aggressive dog or an angry customer, but for the most part, people are happy to see the brown truck pull up. It's kind of like the ice cream truck, but for adults who are addicted to Amazon. That said, delivering after dark has always made me a bit uneasy. Not enough to quit or anything like that, but enough that I keep a heavy flashlight within easy reach, and I've gotten pretty good at sizing up a property before I get out of the truck. You develop a sense for which houses to approach carefully. This happened in 2023, right when the days were getting shorter. I was covering a route that included what we call the Ridge, a retirement community built into the hills about 40 minutes outside the city. A real nice area, lots of retirees and older folks who'd cashed out their houses in California and moved somewhere quieter. The whole development is carved into forest land, with these winding roads and houses on big wooded lots. Beautiful during the day, stunning even, but at night, it can be a different story. I had 2 stops left up there, both signature required. It was already past 8:30, fully dark. The first delivery went fine. A nice older lady who tried to tip me $5 for bringing her medicine. I politely declined, as always. Company policy. The second house was at the end of a long driveway, maybe 150 feet from where I had to park the truck. No lights that I could see either, but that wasn't unusual. Half the time people forget they'd ordered something. I grabbed my package, some kind of small electronics, going by the weight, and headed up the driveway. These folks had motion lights, which was nice, but they only covered about halfway. The last stretch to the front door was really dark, just some ambient light from a street lamp way back by the road. I knocked and waited. Eventually, I knocked again, louder. Nothing. The package didn't need a signature, so I decided to sit it by the door. I scanned it with my DIAD board, took the required photo for proof of delivery, standard stuff. I was halfway back to the truck, checking my next stop on the board, when I looked up and froze. There was something at the front of my truck. I thought it was an animal of some sort. Could be someone trying to steal packages. We had been having issues with that in some areas. But as I focused, I realized this wasn't a person, and if it was an animal, it was huge. Big and dark and leaning out from around the front bumper, like it had been hiding there, watching the house, watching me walk up to it. The streetlight caught its eyes, a golden reflection, like when you catch a cat in headlights, except way too high off the ground for any cat. In my head, I was starting to panic. I was thinking, my God, I'm out here alone with a black bear. There is a population of them in the ridge, what with all the wilderness. I'd seen plenty of bears over the years, usually running away from the truck. This thing wasn't running. I stood stock still, package scanner still in my hand. Safety training started to kick in. Don't run from bears, don't make eye contact, back away slowly. That's what I did, a careful step at a time, backing up toward the house I had just left. The animal shifted slightly, still watching me. Even in the dark, I could tell it was massive, bigger than any black bear I'd seen in the area, or in videos on the internet. Something about the way it was positioned seemed weird. It was like it was leaning against the truck, almost casual. I kept backing up, trying to think. The house behind me was empty. The nearest neighbor was a good quarter-mile through the woods. But my truck was right there. Yet, I'd have to get past this thing to reach the driver's side. And unlike regular vehicles, UPS trucks don't have doors on the driver's side. Just an open doorway for quick exits. Great for efficiency, not so great when there's a bear, or whatever that was, between you and safety. I must have stood there for about 2 or 3 minutes, waiting for it to lose interest and wander off. But it didn't move. It kept watching me. Finally, I decided to try scaring it off. Make myself look real big, make noise. That usually works with wildlife. Isn't that what they say? I raised my arms over my head and stood on my toes, and I began to shout, "Hey, get out of here," over and over. The animal stood up. Not from all fours to 2 legs the way a bear would. No, this looked more like a person who was kneeling, standing up, smooth and straight. This thing was tall, 7, maybe 8 feet even. And it was too narrow at the shoulders, too long in the limbs to be a bear. My mouth went dry. My brain was screaming at me to run away and to save myself. But I couldn't move. It took 2 steps towards me then, still on 2 legs, covering way too much ground with each stride. I heard gravel crunching under its weight. Then it stopped, cocked its head to the side like it was listening to something. The eyes turned away from me, looking back toward the road. A second later, I heard what it heard. A car coming up the main drive. The creature dropped to all fours in a fluid motion and bounded away into the woods. Its movement wasn't like a bear's lumbering run, but like, I'm not sure what to compare it to. It looked like it was definitely comfortable on all fours, but also natural when on 2 legs. The approaching car's headlights swept across the driveway entrance. I did not wait to see who it was. I sprinted to the truck, jumped in, and started it up. Then I got the heck out of there. My hands were shaking the whole drive back to the depot. The next morning when I was around coworkers again, during our preload meeting, I brought up the encounter, then followed up with, "Have any of you guys ever seen weird stuff on deliveries?" Phillips, who had been driving even longer than me, looked up from his coffee. What kind of weird? I don't know, wildlife maybe? Phillips was quiet for a moment. Speaking of the ridge, I've heard things up there. Couple times late deliveries on those back roads. Swear I've heard snarling. Deep snarling. Way bigger than a dog, it sounded like. Truth be told, it was scary enough that I skipped a delivery once. I was too freaked out to get out of the truck. Peyton chimed in. That's nothing. You guys know that lakeside retirement place? I was doing a late delivery there maybe 2 years ago. Middle of February, freezing cold, no one out. I come around a curve, and there's this woman standing in the middle of the road. I slam on the brakes. Figure she's confused. Maybe she's got dementia or something. Lots of that in these retirement areas. But when the headlights hit her full on, well, he shook his head. Her clothes were soaking wet, hair all matted down, and she's just standing there, smiling at me. Not shivering, not moving, just smiling. So what'd you do? Backed up and took a different road. Reported it to dispatch. They said they'd send someone to check. Next day I asked about it. Nobody found anything. No missing persons, no wet spots on the road, nothing. By this point in the conversation, the supervisors came in and told us to get back to work. I've delivered to the ridge plenty of times since that night. During the day, it's fine. Just another route. But the company changed cutoff time for the area to 7 p.m., no exceptions. They said it was for driver safety, regarding dark roads, lack of lighting, lack of vision. I never asked if something specific prompted the change. I think I was almost murdered. From EMpT. I worked as EMS for a while, covering 3 small towns and about 400 square miles of farmland, forest, and not much else. It was good work, quiet most nights, but nothing could have prepared me for what happened for this night. My partner that night was Strickland, a good kid about 25 years old, been on the job maybe 2 years. He was eager and competent, and still believed we were making a difference. We'd been partnered up for about 4 months, long enough to have a rhythm. I liked working with him, as he didn't feel the need to fill every silence with chatter. We were stationed in the largest of our 3 towns, though that's not saying much. The population was, 2,100 back then? Our shift started at 7 p.m., and by 3 a.m. we'd only run 2 calls. The first was a minor fender bender out on Route 19. Nobody hurt, but protocol said we had to check everyone out. Second was a Mrs. P. For her sake, I'll just go by her last initial. She's 91 years old, and she was convinced she was having a heart attack. She wasn't, though. It was anxiety like usual, which can feel multiple times worse when you're that age. But we transported her anyway. Better safe than sorry with elderly patients. We were back at the station. Strickland was dozing off in the recliner and I was doing a crossword. Around that time, dispatch crackled to life about a 78-year-old man with chest pains, possible cardiac event. I was pretty sure I knew the address. That was one Walter K's place, about 16 miles out. We'd been there 3 or 4 times in the past year, always cardiac related. Walter had congestive heart failure, diabetes, the whole 9 yards, poor guy. His daughter Linda usually called it in, stayed pretty calm considering. I let dispatch know we were responding. Strickland was up and heading for the rig. That kid could go from dead sleep to fully alert in about 2 seconds. I kind of envied him for that. The old rural road there was kind of what you'd picture. Narrow with winding trees pressing in on both sides. And for a February in Ohio, everything was dead and gray. Walter's place was set back from the road, long gravel driveway leading to a farmhouse that had seen much better days. Right away I noticed there were no lights on. Usually, Linda would have every light in the place blazing when we showed up. Porch light, living room, kitchen. She wanted to make sure we could find them. This time, Nothing. The house was completely dark. "Kinda weird, isn't it?" Strickland said. I agreed, but I didn't say anything. We pulled up close to the front porch, grabbing the jump bag and monitor. Standard cardiac response kit, including meds, oxygen, AED if needed. The front door was open by about 6 inches. Not wide open, but definitely not closed. "Mr. K? Linda? EMS?" I called out, knocking on the doorframe. Nothing. I pushed the door open wider, found the light switch. The smell hit us right away. Copper and iron. Blood. If you've worked trauma, you know that smell. It's distinct and metallic. Gets in the back of your throat. "Crap," Strickland muttered. The living room looked normal, but the smell was stronger as we moved toward the kitchen. I went in first. The kitchen was a mess. There was blood on the linoleum, smeared like something had been dragged through it. A trail led from near the refrigerator to the back door, which was also standing open. No body, just blood, and a whole lot of it. "Call it in," I told Strickland. "Tell dispatch we need law enforcement. Possible crime scene." While he got on the radio, I followed protocol. Check for patients. Secure the scene. The blood trail was clear even in the dim light. Thick and dark and still wet in places. Whoever lost this much blood needed help fast, though the amount suggested they might be past helping. I stepped out the back door, flashlight following the trail. It continued across the backyard, darker stains on dead grass, heading straight for the tree line a few yards out. There was a light on above the door, which flooded the immediate area with harsh white light. That's when my training and instinct started to argue with each other. Training said, check for the patient, render aid if possible. Instinct said, however, something was very wrong here. The blood trail was very neat, almost organized. When people are injured badly enough to bleed like this, they don't walk in straight lines. They stumble, fall, leave handprints where they tried to steady themselves. This looked more like something being dragged. I made it about 20 feet from the house when the light from the house clicked off. A motion sensor that had already been on. The darkness was too much. I had to stop, waiting for my eyes to adjust. Behind me, I could hear Strickland's voice through the open door, about dispatch confirming the call originated from this address at 2:57 a.m. The caller was identified as Walter K., reported chest pains and shortness of breath. That was only 18 minutes ago. The blood on the kitchen floor was tacky but not dry. Whatever happened here was recent. If Walter called, where was he? Where was Linda? I swept the flashlight beam across the yard, following the trail of blood. It disappeared into the darkness between the trees. And then I noticed the silence. For a February night in rural Ohio, you do expect some noise. Like wind in the bare branches, maybe a hooting owl. Definitely small animals moving about. But there was nothing here. Just my own breathing and the faint sound of Strickland's radio chatter. Then, at the edge of my beam, right where the trees started, there was movement. Just a shape shifting slightly, like someone adjusting their position. I froze, my light trained on the spot. Nothing moved again, but I was certain someone was there, standing among the trees and watching. "Strickland!" I called, not taking my eyes off the tree line. "We need to go, now!" "Did you find them?" he called back. "We need to go," I repeated, backing slowly toward the house. "Get to the rig." The motion light clicked back on as I got close to the house. In that instant of brightness, before my eyes could adjust, I saw it clearly, a figure standing between two large oak trees. It was tall and completely still, facing the house, facing me. Then the light went off again, and darkness swallowed everything beyond the porch. I backed through the door, nearly colliding with Strickland. "We're leaving, now." "What's going on? Is someone out there?" "I think so. We need to move." Credit to the kid, after that he didn't argue. We gathered our gear quickly, both of us glancing at the windows. As we moved through the living room, I looked back to the kitchen. Through the kitchen window above the sink, barely visible in the dark, the figure from the trees was now standing in the middle of the backyard, much closer. "Oh God," Strickland breathed. He had seen them too. We didn't run, but we did move fast. We got to the ambulance, locked the doors. I started the engine while Strickland radioed dispatch, requesting immediate law enforcement at this location. They let us know that the sheriff's department was en route, ETA approximately 20 minutes. 20 minutes, I thought. Might as well have been 20 hours. I put the rig in reverse, started to back down the driveway. In the side mirror, illuminated by our taillights, I saw the figure walking towards us. A slow yet confident walk, coming around the side of the ambulance. "He's coming around your side," Strickland said. I stopped backing up then. I didn't want to hit whoever this was, despite everything. The walking stopped too. Through the mirror, I could see them standing maybe 10 feet from the door, just waiting there. Then came the sound that still makes my skin crawl when I remember it. Fingernails dragging along the metal side of the ambulance. The sound moved until it was on Strickland's side, circling us, then going back to the back doors. Then it stopped, followed by footsteps on the gravel, moving away. "Where'd they go?" Strickland whispered. I checked all the mirrors. Nothing. Just an empty night, but my mind was screaming at me that they were still out there. The sheriff's department showed up in force. 2 units, lights blazing. Deputies swept the property while we gave our statements. They ended up finding Walter K. in the root cellar behind the house. But he was deceased. Massive blood loss from trauma to the neck and chest. He had been dead for hours, they said, way longer than 18 minutes. But someone had called 911 at 2:57. Someone who knew Walter's name, knew his medical history. The phone in the kitchen had blood on it, but no usable prints. Linda, they never found. Her car was gone, her purse and keys too. The investigation treated her as a suspect for a while, but then as a probable victim. The blood in the kitchen was Walter's, but there was too much of it, like someone had spread it around, maybe even staged it. The deputies asked us to describe what we'd seen, who we'd seen. Strickland and I looked at each other, not sure what to say. What we saw was a tall figure in the dark that walked around our ambulance. Someone who tried our doors, but we didn't see a face, no details, just a shape and a presence, and the absolute certainty that we were being hunted. They processed the scene for hours. Footprints were found that didn't match Walter's shoes or any of Linda's. They found scratches on our ambulance, exactly where we'd heard them. But there was no suspect, no explanation for who called 911. No reason why someone would kill an old man, then wait around for the ambulance to arrive. The Things in the Cornfield. From XDuggery331. I've been part of a carpool for about 3 years, in which I would drive Mondays and Tuesdays, T on Wednesdays, B, my brother-in-law, Thursdays and Fridays, and C was still too new to the group to take a turn at the wheel. He'd only started riding with us in June, when his truck threw a rod. Now, I'm going to tell you about something we saw in the cornfields on a detour that added 20 minutes to our drive and would leave us with nightmares for the rest of our lives. It was a Tuesday night. We clocked out at 11:30 like always. Second shift at the transmission plant ended officially at 11, but there was always cleanup to do, always some supervisor wanting one more thing done. By the time we made it to my Tahoe in the back lot, the dashboard clock read 11:43. B laughed, saying something about, "At least it's not raining." He would sit behind me, T would take shotgun, seniority privilege, and C climbed in behind him. The first part of the drive was the same as always. Out of the industrial park, through the tired streets of East Side Detroit, past the abandoned Packard plant that looked like a skeleton in the dark. We knew every pothole, every broken streetlight, every corner where you didn't stop for red lights after midnight unless you wanted trouble. The detour began where I-94 should have taken us home. Instead of the smooth 6-lane highway, we had to exit on DeQuindre and follow a maze of orange signs through neighborhoods that got progressively quieter and shadier. Then came the stretch everyone hated, Old Van Dyke Road, through 12 miles of pure farmland. T huffed, saying he couldn't believe how long it was taking to do this work here. Said his dad's crew could have repaved the stretch in 2 weeks. B brought up it's because it's a union job, that they like to milk it for what it's worth. His words, not mine. The suburbs gave way to farms so gradually, you hardly noticed until the streetlights disappeared and the only light came from our headlights. This time of year, late in September, the corn was at its tallest. 7, maybe 8 feet high, these things. Walls of green on either side of the narrow 2-lane road. During the day, it probably looked like a postcard. At night, it felt like driving through a tunnel. C had his head against the window. He always put in overtime every chance he got, probably saving up for something. But then again, aren't we all? B was scrolling through his phone, the screen brightness turned down low. T had the radio on, but I wasn't paying attention to it. We were maybe 4 miles into the farmland stretch when I caught movement out of the corner of my eye. Just a flicker in the cornrows, like wind pushing through. Except the air was actually dead still out there. "Something's moving around out there," I said, not really alarmed yet. We saw deer all the time on this route, and I've heard there's plenty of coyote out there too. T glanced over, asking where. I told him the right side in the corn. He watched for a moment, then said he didn't see anything. When I looked again, there was definitely something there disturbing the stalks, moving parallel to us about 30 feet from the road. The motion was wrong for deer too. Deer aren't usually this steady and purposeful. When deer run through corn, they bound and leap, crashing through in bursts. This was smooth and continuous, like something pushing through the stalks at a steady lope. B leaned forward and pointed, saying he sees it, wonders if it's a dog. T chimes in, saying that must be a big freaking dog. I eased off the gas a little, dropping from 45 to 35. The movement in the corn slowed too, maintaining the exact same relative position. I noticed, when I began to speed back up, it did too. I remember thinking, that's weird. By then, C was paying attention, wanting to know what we were talking about. B told him that something was pacing us in the corn, now about 10 yards out. We were all watching now. The corn stalks bent and swayed in a clear line. Whatever was causing it kept perfect pace with my Tahoe. I decided to test it again. 50 miles per hour, then back down to 30. The thing in the corn matched every change instantly. C suggested maybe it stuck. Like, what if we caught it on something that we were dragging behind us and didn't know it? But that didn't make sense. How would we have not noticed that? Besides, I could see the way it moved independently. The stalks springing back after whatever it was passed through. And now that we were all watching, I noticed something else. "Look at how wide the trail is it's making," I noted. "That's no deer." The path through the corn was too wide for a single animal, unless that animal was the size of a small rhino. While we do have black bears in Michigan, they're pretty rare, and they sure as heck didn't run alongside cars for miles, keeping pace. T asked how long it had been following us. Would have been about several minutes by now. He said to speed up and see what happens. I already did that, but maybe he wasn't paying attention. So I pressed the accelerator, taking us up to 60. The speedometer needle climbed, and my knuckles tightened on the wheel. These back roads weren't made for speed, especially at night. But I wanted to see what this thing would do. The movement in the corn kept pace effortlessly still. 60 miles per hour, and it was matching us stride for stride, never falling behind, never getting ahead. The only sound was our engine and the radio, but underneath it, if you listened hard, I swear I heard the stalks breaking. I heard B curse under his breath then. T spoke up. "There's a gap coming up." He pointed ahead to where a farm access road cut through the fields. He wanted me to slow down when we get there, get a good look at the thing. My foot hovered over the brake as we approached the gap. The thing in the corn seemed to sense what was coming. The movement stopped about 20 feet before the opening. We rolled past at maybe 20 miles per hour, all of us staring into the darkness between the fields. But all we saw was just black space and the first row of corn on the other side. Then, just as we passed, I caught eye shine in the rearview mirror. 2 points of yellow light reflecting our taillights, at least 5 feet off the ground. "Did you guys see?" I started. But T demanded I keep driving, obviously beginning to be freaked out. I accelerated again, and immediately the movement resumed in the corn on our right. But now it wasn't alone. On the left side, another disturbance started, matching our speed just like the first. C noted out loud that there were 2 of them now, and wondered what they are. "I don't know," I told him, pushing us back up to 50. "They're not having any trouble keeping up." The twin trails paced us, occasionally converging toward the road before pulling back. Were they testing something? That's what it looked like they were testing us, seeing how we'd react. The corn was so thick we never got a clear view, just suggestions of size and speed that didn't add up to anything that should exist in Michigan. We'd gone maybe 3 miles like this when T said, "Stop the car." He wanted me to pull over to see what they would do if we just stopped moving. Right away, B said that was a bad idea. But T kept insisting. He'd been at the plant for 22 years, survived 3 rounds of layoffs and a shop floor fire. When he used that tone, you listened. I felt beyond pressured to do what he said. I found a spot where the shoulder was wide enough and eased to a stop, leaving the engine running. The moment our forward motion ceased, the movement in the corn stopped too. Dead stop, instantaneous, like someone had thrown a switch. We sat there with the engine idling. Nobody talked. 30 seconds passed, then a minute. "Maybe they're gone," C said, until we heard breathing. It wasn't quite panting, and it wasn't quite growling either. It was somewhere in between, like a massive dog that had been running too hard. The sound came from the right, close enough that it had to be just on the other side of the corn wall, only 10 feet from T's window. It was deep and rhythmic breathing that made the hair on my neck stand up. Another sound answered from the left side. Same breathing, same distance from the car. B cursed and said screw this, demanding I go. I shifted into drive, but before I could hit the gas, something pushed through the corn on the right. Not all the way, just enough to bend the stalks inward, like it was leaning against them. In the dim light from our running lights, I saw dark fur and bulk, a suggestion of something much larger than any dog. The breathing got loud, and now we could hear other sounds, snuffling like it was scenting the air. And from the left, an answering call, a short, sharp bark that sounded very wrong. Like a dog's bark played low and half the speed. I hit the gas harder than I meant to. The tires spun on the gravel. We lurched back onto the road, fishtailing slightly. In the mirrors, I saw shapes emerge from both walls of corn, dark forms against the darker night. T let me know that they were following us. I pushed the accelerator down, watching the speedometer climb past 60, then 70. The Tahoe's engine was really struggling, and I had to fight to keep us centered on the narrow road. Behind us, just at the edge of our taillight glow, I could see shapes loping along the asphalt. They weren't running flat out. It looked like they were holding back, still just wanting to keep pace, never catching up. C was almost shouting, wanting to know what they wanted. But nobody had an answer, and nobody wanted to figure it out. There was then a thump against the passenger side that made us all jump. Not hard, a tap, like something had brushed against us while running. T jerked away from his door instinctively. B shouted that they're on both sides, right alongside us. I couldn't see them directly, but I could feel them. The presence of something large keeping pace just outside the windows. There was another tap, this time on my side. Testing or playing, showing us they could touch us whenever they wanted. The speedometer hit 75. Way too fast for this road, but I didn't care. The engine screamed and I could smell hot metal and oil. The cornfields blurred past, and I prayed we wouldn't meet another car coming the opposite direction. That's when something hit the rear bumper. Harder this time, enough to make the back end slide slightly. I corrected, heart slamming against my ribs. In the mirror, I saw a shape cross the road behind us, bipedal for just a moment before dropping back to all fours. "Look!" B pointed ahead. There were lights. The edge of the suburbs, finally, house lights and street lights. The cornfields were coming to an end, giving way to developed lots and side streets. As we approached the first sodium lamp, the pursuit stopped like hitting a wall. I didn't slow down until we were deep into the subdivision, past houses and parked cars and normal things. Finally, I pulled into a Shell station and parked under the brightest lights I could find. We sat there for a long time, engine ticking as it cooled. Nobody was willing to get out. Eventually, T opened his door and stepped out on shaking legs, and the rest of us followed. The passenger side of the Tahoe was covered in dust and mud, streaked in long horizontal lines about 5 feet off the ground. It was like something tall had brushed against us while running, over and over. In the dirt, you could see the suggestion of fur patterns, maybe even individual scratches, and the rear bumper had a dent I had never seen before. "We're taking the highway tomorrow," I told them. "I don't care how much extra it costs." Nobody laughed. Nobody argued. Messages from Anonymous. People think night shift highway maintenance is boring. They're mostly right. What could be more exciting than setting up road cones, filling potholes, packing up, and moving to the next spot? Repeat that until dawn. The pay is decent because nobody wants to work 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., and the traffic's light enough that you can actually get work done. During COVID, it was even quieter. Summer of 2020, we'd sometimes go hours without seeing another vehicle on State Highway 58. That's the stretch where we found the deer. My partner, I'll call him Dempsey, had been doing this 15 years. He was a Vietnam vet, tough as leather, seen everything the job could throw at you. Of course, dead animals were part of it. You drag them off the shoulder so they don't cause accidents. State's supposed to send a crew to collect them, but on remote stretches like 58, sometimes they rot where you leave them. It was July, a very humid night. We were working a cluster of potholes near mile marker 47. Bad ones too, the kind that could snap an axle if you hit them wrong. I was running the hot mix while Dempsey directed traffic. Not that there was any, however. "Got a deer up ahead," he called out to me. "Shoulder side." I finished tamping down the patch I was working on, and grabbed the shovel. Usually, we'd just hook it under the body, drag it down into the ditch. I'd done it dozens of times. When I got there, it had a sweet rot mix smell to it, with that tar stink from the hot mix. This one had been dead at least a day, bloated up in the heat. It was lying on its side, back toward the road. I walked around to get a better angle for the shovel, when I noticed something. There were letters carved into the hide, deep cuts through the fur and into the meat. It read, "Soon." Each letter was maybe 8 inches tall, not spray painted, not burned either, but carved into it. The edges were real clean. Whoever did this had taken their time and used something sharp. The flies were thick around the wounds. "Dempsey," I called. "Come look at this." He ambled over and stopped short when he saw it. "Oh my God," he muttered. "That's not right." We both just stared. In 15 years, Dempsey had never seen anything like it. In my 3 years, I sure hadn't. Gotta be kids," he said finally. "A sick joke." I hoped so. We both doubted it was kids, though. Kids around here spray-painted bridges and smashed mailboxes. They didn't carefully carve messages into dead animals to be found by random road workers. We dragged it into the ditch, both of us trying not to look at those letters. Finished our shift in near silence. Over the next few weeks, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I asked the day shift guys if they'd heard anything, but they hadn't. I checked local news sites, Facebook groups in the area. No mentions of vandalized deer. No warnings about sicko teenagers. It was like it never happened. Dempsey brought it up exactly once about 3 weeks later. We were patching the same stretch of 58, different mile marker. He asked if I ever thought about it. I said I did, and he agreed that he did too. Now, same highway, mile marker 52 this time. Around 2 a.m. it was dead quiet except for crickets and our equipment. I was walking ahead of the truck, spray painting circles around the potholes we needed to hit, when I spotted something on the shoulder. Another deer, but this one was arranged. It had obviously been placed there. It was lying on its back, legs straight out like someone had posed it. Smaller than the first, maybe a yearling. I knew before I got close that I'd find something carved into it. Watched. Same precise lettering, same size, cut into the exposed belly where the white fur made them stand out stark and clear. But this deer was fresh. The blood in the wounds was still dark and tacky. It was a few hours old at most. My skin went cold. Whoever did this had been here tonight, maybe right before we got here. Maybe they were still here. I called over Dempsey again. He didn't argue, but he did say that looks fresh. We ended up calling state police. A trooper showed up, and we explained the 2 deer we'd found, and showed him this one. Thankfully, he appeared to take it seriously. He asked if we'd seen any strange people, sketchy vehicles, or anything like that. But no, we couldn't be of much help. And that's the end of the story. As far as I know, nothing has been found out, and I haven't found any more carved up deer. So who was doing it and why? Who knows? That cornfield story reminds me of one of the first cryptid sighting stories I ever read on the internet. It was about a pack of wolf-like things following a car on a lonely stretch of road. It's crazy to imagine something that scary, unknown, big, and fast, just following you. Because what could it do if it wanted to do more than just follow? Good night. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Tales from the Break Room. I'm your host, Darkness Prevails. Follow me on X at Dark Prevails. Support what I do by getting my new book, Creepy Campfire Stories, on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or your favorite bookstore. Or just go to creepycampfirestories.com. Or follow and review Tales from the Break Room on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Thank you. If you've got a scary work story, you could always send it to us at eriecast.com/submit. Thank you. Until next time, everyone, it's time for me to clock out. But I'll be back soon performing more scary overtime just for you.